Okay, hi. So today I'm going to be talking about peristalsis and the effects of gut motility disorders. So what is peristalsis? Peristalsis is the movement of a bolus in the gastrointestinal tract. So a bolus is basically food that has been mixed into a ball. And it's basically just travels down the gastrointestinal tract for later reasons, which I'll explain. But so it's caused by involuntary movement, and it's caused by contraction and relaxation. So in this picture right here, you can see that these arrows on the top are indicating contraction, and then around the bolus, that's indicating relaxation. And contraction and relaxation will occur all throughout the gastrointestinal tract, which I said is known as peristalsis. So the gastrointestinal tract or GI anatomy, this is basically it happens in peristalsis basically happens in the whole gastrointestinal tract. So it starts with the mouth and ends with the anus. So basically, in the mouth, you have an enzyme called amylase, and amylase is what breaks down the food. So amylase helps form that bolus, and the bolus starts to form in the esophagus. So the esophagus begins to start that peristalsis or those wave-like contractions, and peristalsis the bolus goes into the esophagus, travels all the way down to the stomach, goes into the small intestine, and then into the large intestine, and then later into the rectum and then the anus. So why does peristalsis occur? Well, these movements force the bolus into the digestive tract. So basically, the bolus is super important because it's what your body is extracting the nutrients from. So like I said before, the bolus enters the esophagus and goes into the stomach. So once it starts to go into the stomach, that's when it begins to start the nutrient extraction. Sorry. And later into the small intestines, and that's what your small intestines is. It also helps with nutrient extracting, and so does your large intestines. And peristalsis is also super important because it also helps with eliminating waste. So wave-like contractions will also occur in your large intestines as well. So how it works. Basically, relaxation and contraction occur throughout the whole GI tract. So this picture right here does a great job of explaining this. So basically showing how circular muscles contract at the top. So that's shown by these two arrows coming inward. So that's showing contraction of circular muscles. And then here's the bolus of food, and that's showing where the relaxation is occurring. And then below the bolus, it says longitudinal muscles contract. And the reason why these longitudinal muscles are contracting is so that they can shorten the passageway. So basically, under the bolus, they're contracting and shortening so that the bolus can now come into a new section of the esophagus. And the picture also shows right here the gastroesophageal sphincter, how it's closed. However, when the bolus of food enters the gastroesophageal sphincter, then it will begin to open because the muscles will begin to relax around it because that bolus traveling into the stomach. So this is propelled by smooth muscle, and the action occurs all the way from the esophagus to the rectum. So segmentation. Segmentation is super important because it goes hand in hand with peristalsis. So basically, peristalsis is described as those propelling movements from the contraction and relaxation, but segmentation is also super important because it's that mixing of the food. So segmentation mixes food forward and backward throughout the gastrointestinal tract. So basically, this picture here shows how there's a brown bolus and there's a white bolus. And then the next picture it shows arrows pointing to the next bolus, which is, the bolus is splitting off into the next section. And so the next column shows a half white bolus and a half brown bolus. And that's just indicating basically that there's a mixture of food occurring throughout the gastrointestinal tract due to segmentation. So segmentation is basically mixing of food and the mechanical breakdown. So the large intestine and peristalsis. So like I said earlier, I said it pretty briefly earlier that the large intestine and peristalsis is super important because basically nutrients are still being absorbed in the large intestine or the colon. So nutrients that were not absorbed in the small intestines are now being absorbed in the large intestines. So in this picture you can see the ascending, transverse, and descending colon and then the rectum. So basically this whole, there's peristalsis occurring in this whole, organ right here. So wave-like contractions occur throughout the colon in order to push that waste out. Because once food is entering the colon, it doesn't really have as many nutrients in it. It's becoming more waste. So basically peristalsis now is working to push that waste out of the body or expel that waste out of the body. Okay, motility syndrome. So now basically I'm going to talk about how peristalsis, if it's not functioning correctly or if it's functioning properly, this can cause different types of disorders. So basically motility syndrome is the lack of movement of that bolus. So it can happen, in all the organs that I listed before, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, large intestine. It can happen in any of those. You can have different disorders in any. So the disorder that I'm going to be talking about today involved with dysmotility syndrome is gastroparesis. So gastroparesis is basically a disorder where the stomach cannot empty itself of food. So this is because of damaged nerves in the stomach. So this disorder can be managed, but it can't be treated. So this picture is great. It shows how the opening of the stomach, it's open and it has all this food just kind of sitting in the stomach and not being absorbed or anything. And then here's the end of the stomach where it's not even being emptied out. There's no food being emptied out. It's just sitting in the stomach. And this is really just, it can cause different effects such as, nausea, bloating, and it can cause you to feel full a lot, which isn't really good because then you're not receiving any nutrients. You're not receiving any more food and you're just really just sitting with old food in you, which is pretty gross. So, yeah. Now I'm talking about peristalsis stimulation. So ways to improve the movement of the gastrointestinal tract. So some ways are by eating certain foods. So foods such as foods that are high in fiber, so beetroot, natural probiotics, yogurt, miso, raw cheese, tempeh, cucumber, magnesium-rich foods, whole wheat bread, cashews, quinoa, and dark chocolate. These are all foods that can stimulate peristalsis and help you, propel these foods down, which is super important for digestion. So, in conclusion, peristalsis is extremely important for digestion because without peristalsis, there would be no way to really absorb the nutrients. So peristalsis actually helps with getting rid of waste. So that's also super important. And one interesting fact that I have is that you can actually eat upside down with because of peristalsis, because of that contracting and relaxation. And are there any questions? and here's my works cited.